Well, hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fully Alive podcast with Michael and Megan Brueseke. Today is a little bit different. Megan is away. She's off on this podcast episode. I have a very special guest, my one and only daughter, Claire. If you're new to our family, we have 5 kids, 4 boys, 1 daughter, and Claire's 15. And we're excited for today. Why don't you say what's up to everybody?
Hey, everybody.
I want to help you get to know Claire a little bit because we're going to jump in and talk about life as a teenager and growing up in a pastor's home and expectations. But let's do some fun stuff first so people get to know you a little bit. And maybe I'll be surprised by some of these answers. Maybe not. We'll see. Would you describe yourself as a morning person or a night owl?
I kind of like both.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like a night owl, sometimes it's a morning person.
What is early to get up to you?
Like before 7:30.
Yeah. Before 7:30 It feels early. So you get up that early every day?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's great. What's your least favorite chore to do around the house?
I don't know. The dishes aren't that bad anymore.
Yeah.
Probably unloading the dishwasher.
Unloading?
I'll load the dishwasher, but I don't want to unload it.
Yeah. Would you rather unload the dishwasher or clean your room?
Clean my room.
Yeah, that's great. What is your current favorite worship song?
Oh, that's definitely a hard question.
What's one of your favorite worship songs?
Like right now?
Right now.
Probably What a God.
What a God. That's a great song. I'm loving that also. If you could eat one meal forever, this is really get to know you. What would it be?
I feel like it would have to be just like fajitas.
Fajitas?
Like classic fajitas.
I love fajitas. I love sharing fajitas.
Yep. Fajitas for 2.
We do that. It's great. It's fun. Even though mom's not here, let's see what you think about the difference between your parents.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
And I feel like these are obvious to anybody that knows us. Who is more likely to randomly break into song?
Definitely you. That's not even a debate at all.
Yeah. That's great. I do that often. I also enjoy breaking into dance.
Yep.
It's
both.
Do you feel like you're getting a little bit of that, or do you steer away from these kinds of things?
I tend to steer away, I think definitely in public.
Who's more likely to embarrass you in public, me or mom?
Also you.
Yeah.
Especially with the dancing and the singing.
Do you feel more nervous because mom's not here as a part of this podcast of what I might ask you?
I don't know.
Last one before we get into a serious conversation. Who do you take after the most, mom or dad? You think?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
People always say I look like mom.
Yeah.
I don't see that though because I don't think I look like her. I honestly don't know. Both of you. It's a combination.
It's a combination. You're our daughter.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I think you look like your mom. I think you're both beautiful. So we want to talk today, as I mentioned earlier, about what I think is an important topic, an important conversation, and that is growing up as a pastor's kid, growing up in a home that in some degree is like growing up in a glass house, meaning our kids grow up with expectations that we don't put on them, and I would say people aren't supposed to put on them, but I think there's a natural thing that can begin to happen in a community of believers. So we want to talk a little bit about that. Also, though, it's so important that young people discover Jesus for themselves. Your parents' faith is not your faith. Your parents' relationship with Jesus is not your relationship with Jesus. And that's a decision that people make, teenagers have to make, kids have to make. You're 15 and we've watched you choose to follow Jesus. We've watched you make your relationship with Jesus your own personal faith. And so I wanted to talk about some of that today. Let's start with growing up as a pastor's kid. What do you feel like were some of the common struggles that you had?
I feel like one of the ones that was a struggle, but I didn't really mind it, was just I can't have church. Even when I was 6. I feel like it was just sports or just kind of any activities, you would always be no, I'm at church, which I think I did like it, but that it just started to kind of just be no, I'm going to be at church. And
yeah. So when you were, as you've grown up, still your life now, because you're not grown, right? You're 15, freshman in high school. But a lot of times because church is a priority, the local church is a priority for our family. There's certain things that maybe you had friends or other people doing things that you weren't allowed to do. Do you recall, or just how even now you process that at different times, what that feels like?
I think that I have now, and I've kind of always liked going to church, and I've liked, going to all the worship nights and all the events that would happen that would cause me not to be able to do certain things that my other friends were doing. But I think that it has like a couple years ago, like when I was older and I was playing sports that were more like every single day sports, or like not ever being able to play like a travel sport. Like most of my friends play club volleyball and they miss like a ton of weekends just to go to tournaments in like different states and like kind of far away. And I was never able to do that. But I think that like I was okay with that because I was at church and I liked being here, and I do still like being here. So
that's great. I'm glad you still like being here. Right. Yeah. That's great. What are some of the pressures that you feel like people have put on you, social, like behavioral expectations maybe, and how have you managed those, do you feel like?
I feel like some of the specific ones is like, you're a pastor's kid. Like this always gets said so much is, you're the pastor's kid, like you can't do that, or why are you doing that, you're a pastor's kid, or like you're the pastor's daughter. Like even when I would be like hanging out with my friends, like I'm still a kid, I'm still gonna make mistakes, and I'm literally just like I am a kid, and whenever I would like say things or something and they would be like, oh wow, the pastor's daughter said that, like we still make mistakes, and I feel like that's just like something really common that people say, which it like choosing your own faith, like just because I was born from a pastor doesn't mean that like I have everything all sorted out, because I'm only 15. So.
Yeah, I don't have everything all sorted out.
Yeah, you don't either. So
and so it doesn't, even at 44, you're not going to get to where well, maybe you will, because I think that you're way further along than I was at 15. That's great. Did you experience that? I mean, I know you've experienced that, like friends at school, friends at church, and things like that. Are there specific things you think of that helped you overcome any of that, or do you know what I'm asking? Like just so you didn't carry that.
Yeah, I think like some specific things is just like, it's okay. Like everyone sins and everyone falls short of the glory of God, which is why we had to have Jesus come, so that we could, like be saved through grace. And like some people aren't going to understand. Like that is like just a true thing about being a pastor's kid, is like you're not really going to understand it unless you are a pastor's kid. It's just like a whole different thing, and like you have to like realize that like it's okay, because that it's okay to make mistakes, and like you'll be forgiven, but that not everyone's going to understand that. And those expectations don't matter, because that they are not, you don't need to live up to those expectations because they're not from God. And
that's so good. I think that's true for everybody. I think people can put other people can put expectations on us that are not from God, that we feel like we have to live up to. And one of the things, that how we've tried to raise you, and one of the things we do in leading our church is that we're pastors, like Megan and I, we're pastors, but we're people, right? Pastors, like we're all still people. We all still have struggles and all these things. And I think that all of us when we aren't necessarily walking the same exact walk in a lot of ways, we begin to think that this is what it's like for people in that, and it can be so different. Let's have some fun. What has been maybe a funny or some best moments, either humorous or like this was great, that you felt like because you've grown up being a pastor's kid was awesome?
One I can think of right now is just like all the this is more like just being staff, but like all the staff parties that we've had, all the Christmas parties that we've had, just from like growing up with all those people and like just having fun. Like I remember one year we had a staff party at our house and we had like a slip and slide and like watching all the people like do the slip and slide and like all that. It's just so fun to like, it's like a whole new like community, because it's like a community in the community of the church. Yeah. So,
almost like a family, right?
It's like a family.
It's a big extended, because you growing up, we had, gosh, I don't even remember now off the top of my head, but there was a lot, over the last 10 years, we've had a lot of kids, on our team. And so you've grown up with a lot of people in that way. Do you remember how old you were when you felt like people looked at you differently because you were a pastor's kid? or had different expectations on you? Or do you just feel like it's
I
kind of...
feel like my remembrance is just like being in Big Kids. Like that's, or first or fifth. I feel like
Yeah.
that's when it started. Like I don't know why that room. I just felt like it would always be like I would go do something and someone's like, "Oh my gosh, you're a pastor's kid. You can't do that." Or like the other side of where people would be like, "Well, you're the pastor's kid, so you can do whatever you want."
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your relationship with Jesus, right? Because that's what's most important, and that's what I want to, talk about the most today. When do you feel like you started to really realize Jesus was for you? Because we grew up, you're in a pastor's family, and I've told you this, and your brothers, like we build church. That's what we do as the Brueseke family. You don't get a choice in that while you're, a child, but yet you do have the choice to like, I chose to surrender and live for Jesus. Can you talk about that a little bit? Just about like what you remember about how old you were and the different phases maybe you walked through and like getting serious about your faith?
Yeah, I think, well, I got baptized when I was like 8, 9, something like that. But that it was always like, I had always just like loved Jesus when I was little, but I don't think I ever understood it until probably just a couple years ago. And like, I had never really been like not a Christian,
Right.
like ever, because like growing up in church, like I had always just been like, this is kind of who I am. But I don't think that I really understood like having like an actual relationship with Jesus until a few years ago. And like I would always like try to do the things like the Bible stories and like whatever they say, like follow out those things, but I don't think I really understood how to like actually live for Jesus and what it means to like actually be a Christian until like a couple years ago.
What shifted? Like when you think about what shifted in what you would do or how you would think about things once you decided, because I mean I could answer that question to some degree, right? I've seen different things in you, and it's what I watch in multiple kids and teenagers. What is it you feel like shifted in you as you made that decision?
So I think that I made that decision probably when I was in middle school. Like just that kind of time is just like, it just can be kind of hard. And especially when we were living in St. Louis and I went to public school, I really started to realize that like when you're surrounded by people who are not Christians and you're just getting less and less time with the Christian community, like you start to realize that like you will fall away if you are not rooted. And just going to church on Sundays is not going to keep you rooted the way that it was when I was little.
Right.
Because I feel as there's like not as much temptations. There's not as many like big things that can happen, or there is big things, but there's not as many like temptations when you're younger. And I think that as you grow older, there's more struggles that you have to work through that you won't make through without God. And like I had to kind of just like choose that like I'm gonna seek Him first,
Right.
so that I know that I will be able to make it through these struggles and be able to become a better person. And I think that was one of my big things, is like I didn't like who I was sometimes, because a lot of the things I would say was my big thing, is that like I was one person at school and I was one person at home, and I would be saying things that I was just like, even if it was just like complaining a lot or just like a lot of gossip, like I knew that I was not living for God in the way that I should be. And He definitely, like when I started to seek Him more, like I still mess up and I still gossip and I still do these things, but it's a conviction that I feel. And I'm like, I need to like pray about that first, but I know that God is like turning my heart into a new direction.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. You said it really quick, but I think it's so true for so many kids and adults. You said I was one person at school and I was one person at home. What did that feel like inside?
One of the things I feel like it felt like was like, don't slip up, because I mean, I like respect you and Mom so much that I would, like one of my big things is I never would want to disappoint you guys. Like I would not want you guys ever to think that I was like a bad person or anything, which I was never like doing crazy things. Like that was not, but just like, even just like the gossiping and my attitude, and like at school, I was surrounded by people who were, in a lot of that kind of, kind of just like what you would think is like normal teenage. Like she's just a teenager, like she can be like that, it's fine. But it was just like, I knew that if I acted this way in my home or at church with my family, that I would not feel good about myself. So I knew that something needed to change, and that I needed to start to like, not living a double life is just so important, because you can't do it forever.
Right.
And like, I mean, maybe it's the easiest while you're in school, but like once you get out of school, like you can't just live a double life, and you're going to have to like figure that out. And yeah.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth. So if I try to kind of lean into a little bit what I heard you say that maybe would be helpful for people that are watching or listening to this, is that if we try to act the way our parents want us to act, just because it's the way our parents want us to act, and not because we're wanting to follow Jesus, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's does that sound like what you would say you kind of worked through a little bit of?
I think that, I feel like I just keep like specifically going back to like 7th grade, like middle school.
But that's your
just
moment,
kind of
right?
like,
We all have a season and
yeah.
a moment when we decide to get serious about Jesus. And so if that, you know, that's what you track back to, like that was my moment. Didn't mean to cut you off, but
No,
go
you're
ahead.
good. I think that I like I had always like lived for God, kind of like closer to being like a full out Christian than most people who are just like Sunday church people, you know, or most kids that were just like Sunday church people. But I still had that like kind of like, I'm just a kid, so it's okay to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think that was one of my big things, is that like, especially with like reading my Bible and like a lot of the words, I feel like words are just very important, and I really struggled with that, is that I'm just a kid, so it's fine. But like all those things were just starting to build up and like make me think like, I feel like I would be disappointing people that loved me and that cared for me, and that I would not be honoring my father and mother by like the things that I may have been saying, because they do have expectations. And while you may not be able to like, we're all growing and we can't always live up to be perfect, you know?
Right.
But like, I still want to like honor you guys, and I still want to like, you know, just like honor God too in that, and trying to grow and not live like that double life.
Yeah. How do you feel like, this is a risky question I'm about to ask, so I might edit this out, you know? But how do you, when you think about that, can you talk any about what I've done or what mom's done, and what makes you, do you feel like you'll receive grace and forgiveness in home, that of knowing that we have high expectations, because we do have high expectations for you and for your brothers. Also our desire to have a home where you can fail in and receive grace in, always a growth spot for me that I know. Can you speak to that in any way about what that's like for you, or how you feel in that?
Like how it was in your home compared to my home?
In our home, like when you think about that you want to do what's right, do you feel like you get grace when you don't, like when you mess up at home? Like what is that? How do you walk that walk? How do you think about that when you think about? I
think that there's so much grace in our home. Like I think about like my friends and people who, which honestly, I try to like compare myself a lot of times, like just like families, like not even like myself, but I'll just like look and see in different homes, and like we definitely have such like a grace-given home, but there's also this expectation that's like, while yes, you're giving me grace, it wasn't okay what I did, you know? And like there's still consequences, which I think just backtracks to like the Bible, is like there's still grace in the fact that you do still have salvation, but there is going to be consequences for some of the things that you do. And I think that we're all trying to grow and we're all trying to get better, but in our home there's like, I'm giving you grace and let's talk about it, you know?
Right.
And like, let me help you grow away. It's not just like you're in trouble for what you did and you need to not do that again, but there's like you're able to guide me in how I feel, that if I was to mess up and I was to bring it to you, I wouldn't be getting like lectured as much as more like, let me help you with this, and like, let me help you with what you're struggling with. Right.
That's great. What would you tell other kids and teenagers who don't really, how do I want to ask this? Who don't really seem like they're at a spot in their life when they care about making their faith personal, and they're just like, if they consider going to church meaning that they're a Christian, or just because their parents are Christians, therefore they're a Christian. What would you say about what you've experienced about how choosing Jesus as a young person has impacted your life, and what you would say to them?
I think that it's just so important, like so important. I know so many people that like, especially because I go to a Christian school, I just see so many people that either live off their parents' faith or just live off like the Bible class that we have at school, you know? And like, I just know that when I did choose my own faith, that I grew so much as a person. And like even in spiritual aspects, but also just in like wisdom and just like as a person, I think I matured a lot more. And like when you choose your own faith, you're still gonna have struggles. Like I still have struggles, but like there's more of a desire, and I feel like there's more of just like a want to know God more, and like you finally feel like you kind of have a relationship more, and it's not just like, yeah, I was going to church, the message was good, and just like, yeah, like I'm a Christian. Like I don't cuss, I'm a Christian. Like all the really, like simple like things that make you a Christian, and what people would say make you a Christian.
That's great, yeah.
But like there's more to it than just doing those little things that from the outside you would look like a Christian. Because I think that there's a lot of people from the outside, they look like a Christian. If they're a kid, maybe they go to church Wednesdays and Sundays, and they talk about it. Like that's what I used to do. I used to like talk about it. Like I would know what I was talking about because I would, I knew the knowledge. I knew the stories.
You knew the Bible stories. Yeah.
But when you're not living that out, there's a difference, and you can tell when other people it's changed. You can tell in yourself when it's changed, and I just think it's so important to realize that, though, because I think you can go a lot without realizing that you're not really in a relationship, because it's not a religion; it's a relationship with God. Like you should want to have that. He wants to spend time with you, and you should want to spend time with Him to grow closer to Him.
Right.
And yeah,
that's great. That's great. I think that's great advice, and I think that. I think you give us grace. You give me grace as your dad, because I know I make a lot of mistakes and missing that. And it's fun to laugh and make you crack up and laugh. You're like, I think it's so fun. I don't know why I'm thinking about that right now, but I just think you're hilarious. So that's great. Final thoughts. Anything you would say that any final thoughts you would offer to parents or to teenagers that you feel like is helpful in following Jesus, choosing this life?
I think one thing, I'm not a parent, but just as a kid's perspective, if like maybe you're a parent and your kids are not like maybe they don't seem to have like that desires, like what I have seen a lot and what I feel is that when you are forcing your kid to be a Christian, but to be a very like perfect Christian, and just like you need to read your Bible every single day, you're coming to church with us every single like time, is that like I think there needs to be a structure there, but you can't choose it for them. And as much as like I want my kids to be Christians, and as much as you want your kids to be Christians, like it does have to be chosen by yourself. But I think that prayer has power, and that when you continue to like make like our home is such a prayer household, and like I think that that is why all of us have just been able to be who we are, is that from you guys, and I'm so grateful of that, because you guys have you grew us. Wait,
God's growing you. I think we use a lot of fertilizer on you guys as each year, and so.
But you raised us in a very like just Christian household, but not just like a structured Christian household, but a very like grace given and prayer filled household, and I'm very grateful for that.
I feel like you're just building me up today, so I feel so encouraged from you, Claire. Well, hey, thank you for sharing some of what it's like growing up and what you would say to teenagers. For everybody else, for those of you watching, listening, we just want to encourage you, especially to take a moment to talk to parents. Keep praying, keep pressing in for your kids. As Claire said, for teenagers and young people out there, I say teenagers, this is for every generation. Choose Jesus. When you make the decision to choose Him, that is the step into living fully alive. And let's don't allow other people to put expectations on our lives, whether it comes from friends at school, whether it comes from friends at work. Like the scriptures tell us God's expectation of us when we follow Jesus. And when we choose to follow Him, we're so much more able to follow through in that life that He has for us. So thanks for tuning in today. Thanks for being a special guest today, Claire. It was awesome. We'll see you next time.